substitute for
Did
it,
you explain
right?
it to Mike? Is he-
40's
is he
already
40?
been
Yes,
Already
but
been
the
used.
200
and
is
the 200, right, so she doesn't use that in the next 3 or 4
Yeah.
But I
years.
feel like I kind of see where you're going, but
I mean,
her
you know,
project
that's
is
actually,
120.
right, well, actually, she very
Yeah, well, I know
well
it wasn't
could
0.55%.
force him to use that
I said, I
money,
called you
but
today and asked
I don't think
basically
she's
the
going
same
anywhere
question.
Did you go to
with
the
it. I'm
info
still a
session?
little
Yeah.
dubious just because
It's
it
like
was sort of
0.55
has
times
bounced
100,000
between
is not
courts, and I don't
$20.
know why
No.
that claim still exists.
And you look at the trend,
You know?
they gave her this,
I
and
know.
they gave
I
her
will.
this,
I
and they
know,
gave
I
her
know.
this.
So that's-
And I don't feel like counting everyone.
Correct, that's me.
I think we always lose.
Thank you, Karen.
How often do you come back? Oh, we won.
Yeah.
All right, we got a motion to resume or to come out of the executive session
Oh my God.
with no action taken. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So move 600. We are back on. Yes, we are. Next, section 6B, special appropriation for 4 million. Excuse me?
5B.
No, you've got the amended one is 6.
Oh,
You don't have the
you're
amended
right.
one.
My apologies. Trying to help you out.
6B, special appropriation, $4,640,000 for well 1A and well 6 water treatment plant project. Can you present?
Good evening.
Hi, Joe.
Hello.
Hey, Joe.
I also have Brad Cargill that's stepping up here, our utility engineer. I don't know if you met him before. He's been with us 13 years, but we're going to kind of talk about two things here. I'm going to be talking about the can we afford this, and Brad is going to be talking about the need. Brad's, as I said, the utility engineer for the last 13 years. He's very versed in the East Lyme water system and stuff. So I'd almost rather start off with by having Brad kind of segue into what the need and kind of building up to that, and then I'll go over the numbers. I'm assuming you guys do have the sheets and so that. I know there's a ton of numbers on here, but I'm going to try to explain them pretty quickly when we get to that. But I'd rather, I mean, this is all about water quality and why we need to do it, and then the numbers back it up. So I'd like to hand it over to Brad then to kind of go over the need for this project.
Joe, when
Certainly.
you get to the afford part, could you define what you mean by can we afford it? That's kind of a
Absolutely.
nebulous term. So
Absolutely.
what's your exact goal that
I'm going to get all that, get all
Okay.
into the numbers, your number board,
Yeah, I saw
but
the
you have to
numbers.
start also by why we're doing it, and then we'll go to the numbers.
Yeah.
Hello,
Hi,
I'm Brad,
Brad.
East Lyme Water and Sewer, utility engineer. You know, the Water and Sewer Commission's focus over the last 10 years or so has been on water supply. We've constructed new wells over recent years, and that all culminated with the completion of the Regional Interconnection Project. Sort of a triage sort of thing. Without supply, you really have nothing in terms of being able to provide, public health, fire protection, consumer needs, and all of that. So we've got that reasonably under control at this point in time. Our mandatory water conservation issues are relatively under control, and we're in good shape with that regard. However, now moving forward, the Water and Sewer Commission's focus, and mine, frankly, as a utility engineer, is to now begin to pick away and start addressing water quality. And the project before us tonight is really a water quality project. It's something we would have liked to have done years ago, but because of the need to address water supply as a more immediate concern, we focused on that. And so, due to elevated levels of iron and manganese naturally occurring in our groundwater supply, as it relates to well 1A, we are proposing to upgrade our well 6 water treatment plant, which is nearby, about 1,400 feet away, near the middle school, Lily B. Haynes School. So we're taking an existing facility at well 6, and we plan to pipe the water from well 1A, which is on Industrial Park Road and near the ball fields, over to well 6, upgrade that water treatment plant, so it has additional capacity to treat the flow rate of well 1A. Now the thing is, why are we doing this for well 1A? Well, because well 1A is important to our system because it provides a good 1/3 of our supply for the entire town of East Lyme. Okay, it serves the commercial, the residential, the schools within the Flanders Boston Post Road corridor. So it's a very important critical piece of infrastructure to us. Iron and manganese are aesthetic concerns, okay? They have led to numerous customer or consumer complaints because it contributes to discolored water, staining of fixtures, laundered goods, and negatively impacts consumer confidence. We deal with this in the water department side on a daily basis. Additional time and effort is spent by our staff basically to flush water mains, manage the concern, to help minimize the problem. I don't know how many of you have followed the last week or so. We had a water main break, actually 2 water main breaks on Boston Post Road. Okay, affected a lot of people. The complaints, customer complaints related to discolored water that followed that event kind of demonstrates the impacts that iron and manganese can have on our system. The iron and manganese precipitates out in our piping, and then eventually it can sort of become a problem when you have a disturbance in the line like we have. At this point, we've done extensive study. Over 3 or 4 years now, we've done extensive study. We've already completed an engineering design, and to get us to this point, the Connecticut Department of Public Health supports the project and is making drinking water state revolving funds available to us. 2% loan, 20 years. Unfortunately, no subsidies are available. Not like we were able to receive with the Regional Interconnection Project. We were fortunate with that. The construction time frame is approximately 14 months, and it's planned to start in June of 2019. We hope to be able to get underway and begin to bid this project in January to be ready for a spring-summer construction period. And that's what I have. I'm available for any questions.
So, if we want to talk about the why first, then we can talk about the cost, then we can pull them both together again. So do we have any questions about the why we're doing what we're doing?
I have a question about it. So, Brad, did I understand that you said we're gonna put piping in to pipe the water from well 1A to well 6 and then install upgrade equipment to treat the water, right?
Well, at well 6, that's correct, yes.
So why wouldn't we just install the equipment to upgrade and treat the water at well 1 instead of piping?
Way
it?
more expensive. You would
Why?
have to construct an entirely new water treatment plant for well 1A. That makes entirely no sense based on, the studies done by the engineers.
You
And
can't
it was almost intuitive that would be the case, because you're now talking about a similar building and facility to serve well 1A, which has a considerably higher flow rate and capacity than well 6. So it's easier to basically run a pipe, a 12-inch diameter pipe from point A to point B, and then take an existing facility and just upgrade it, add an additional filter. It already has 3. We can add an additional filter, we can put an addition on, we can,
How long is the
optimize
pipe
and
run?
upgrade the plant.
How long is the pipe run from well 1A to 6? How long is the pipe run?
1,400 feet.
1,400. And what does that piece of the project cost, roughly, installed? I mean, you must have some unit rates, right? I'm just curious how much. Don't do a lot of homework. I thought you might have it accessible.
Well,
It's okay if you
certainly
don't.
not off the top of my head, but I believe it is
It's 12-inch
something I
ductile
can try to
pipe,
get my
right?
hands on here. If you want to bear with me 1 second, I might have that. Well, I am putting that, they broke it down into different various divisions. I am putting that under site work, which is not only the piping, but other things as well for $582,000. That's kind of, what I estimate here,
So
looking at my paperwork.
582 to pipe it from 1A to 6. I
Yeah,
mean,
and that also includes
site work.
some additional,
okay,
yeah.
582. And so, okay, I guess, I just
Yeah.
was trying to understand.
It really is,
You've looked
I
at
mean,
it, I'm
and the
sure.
thing is, it's not being constructed in any roadways, there are some impacts to the middle school access road,
Yeah.
but for the most part, we're able to do it off-road, and so we're fortunate in that regard.
Okay, so you've
Yeah.
looked at it, it doesn't make sense to
It does not make
upgrade
sense,
it?
no,
Okay.
definitely does not.
Is it typical to do these kind of mods and upgrades? Is this a normal, in other words, what caused this requirement?
Well, first of all, iron and manganese exist in all of our wells. We have 7 wells. Of the 7 wells, 5 already have water treatment plants on them.
Okay, so this is
And-
pretty typical.
This is extremely typical. It's something that we already have in the majority of our wells now. And the ultimate goal is to get them all filtered in the same fashion, of which well 1A is the one we want to work on now.
Okay, and maybe this question, I don't know if this is for Joe later, and I'll wait if it is, but I just want to know who did the estimate on this project.
Oh, well, the estimate is for
4.6. But who did it?
Four.
Who did the estimate?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ty and Bond.
Who?
Ty and Bond.
And what are they? Is there like a
They're
construction
our
manager?
engineering firm that design, that does water and sewer-related type of infrastructure design projects.
Thanks.
So I have a couple questions on this.
Go ahead.
So, has the iron-ese and manganese levels changed? I mean, these wells, how long have all these wells been in town?
They're beginning to elevate.
They're being now.
Yeah, and that's typically what happens. Well 1A was constructed in 2004. Okay, that was one of our first wells as part of the water supply upgrade. That was one of the first projects.
Okay.
But what happens over time, these wells, and you continue to pump them, the iron and manganese will eventually elevate because of the nature of the groundwater.
Sure.
So currently what we do is we have a treatment method that we have been using. It's called sequestration. It has not become as effective as the levels have begun to rise. So we are now sort of forced ourselves into a corner that we have to do something, because sequestration doesn't necessarily remove iron and manganese. It only sequesters it from generally being an aesthetic concern. Eventually it will precipitate out into the water mains, and you don't necessarily get rid of it. But now that the levels are rising, this is not an acceptable method for us.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does the manganese, these are just more like logistics and infrastructure questions.
Mhm.
We did the regional interwater connection. So
Mhm.
how does that tie into our wells and the manganese that's in the
It
water
helps,
system?
because the water that comes from New London has no iron and manganese in it. So when that combines with our water supply, and again, let me emphasize that 5 of our wells already do have treatment systems on there to remove iron and manganese.
Right. And 1A is the only one that doesn't.
Well
from what
1A
I
doesn't,
understand.
and well 2A does not. 2A
Okay.
was another water supply improvement project, which has also got an issue, but we studied both. But well 2A is not as much of a priority in terms of the supply it provides to the town of East Lyme. So we have to pick our battles at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then the water that comes, it doesn't have as much iron and manganese. So this well 1A only affects a certain portion of the.
Well, it's
or
still a
is
third of our
everything is-
supply. It's still a third of our supply. I mean,
Sure.
you're talking a good geographic area.
Right.
of the
right.
town.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get an
Yeah, oh,
understanding
sure.
of how it all works.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah.
Let me see if I had any. And then is there now that we made that regional interconnection with water, there's no capacity issues of water? I mean, we have adequate water for the town? We don't have an issue there?
At this time, no. But the town continues to grow. You always need to kind of look at future supplies and where is your next water going to come from? But we are very stable right now.
Thank you, I don't have any other
Yeah.
questions.
Would this well 1A then service the Costco facility? You're saying that it's mostly a
Pretty much
commercial?
it serves the entire commercial residential corridor on Flanders Road, all the way up to the north end of town and portions of Boston Post Road. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
In combination with the regional interconnection when that is running. Yep.
Joe,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead,
I-
Finish.
This is just so familiar to me. I feel like we discussed this within the past year. Was it this project
It-
as a precursor to what's coming, or
Yes,
did we do something similar like this?
The design phase,
But I think there was a presentation made to this board about this very,
Well, 'cause it's
Well,
about the design.
well, during the design, there
Yeah,
was.
yeah. I'm
Because
just trying to recall my
The-
memories going.
we did a study, which was kind of part one, and then we completed the design, again with DWSRF funds, and that was before the finance board at that time, because we had to secure bonding for the design element.
So this is the implementation.
This is the implementation of it
Gotcha.
now. Yeah, this is the
Gotcha.
culmination of all that previous stuff. Yeah,
Right,
Mm.
right.
and it's not really that long ago.
Okay.
So is there a well, I guess Joe will handle the numbers, but is there a maintenance upgrade package that's also gonna go? What I'm looking for is, we give you the 4.6 million, and then all of a sudden there's an extra 300,000 here, or we need to hire somebody else to keep track of this well, or do something every day, and there's another
Yeah,
cost
well,
that
there
we're
won't
not
be
seeing
any
for
additional labor
30,000.
associated with it. I mean, look at it this way. The chief operator already is maintaining and operating that plant. It's just gonna be a little bit bigger now. It's gonna have another filter to it, and it's going to actually have better controls and communication abilities and, more redundancies and more reliable.
More,
So, yeah. yeah.
Actually less.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
The town is not given any, this is all paid by the ratepayers.
right. No, I understand,
So
yeah.
it's not like the water department or sewer board never go back and say, can we have extra money?
Right.
That's
Well, I mean,
more by,
Taxes are ratepayer, I mean, they're all the same.
not necessarily, because not everyone in town is on water and sewer, so we have to treat those as customers. But the whole purpose we're there is the backing of the town of East Lyme is why we're here.
Right.
They back the bonds.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions on the why?
Just a quick one on, Brad, you mentioned that the iron and manganese have increased, the levels have increased in the well in question,
Yes.
well 1A.
Yes.
So, and you mentioned that discoloration is the issue, but where are we with health issue, like consumption of the water and consuming that iron and manganese? So
Yeah.
is that where's your
generally-
tickler or your
Right.
point at
Iron-
which you have to
Iron
move
and
forward?
manganese, with regard to the EPA view of it, is considered what they call a secondary contaminant, meaning it does not have an MCL with a health risk associated with it.
Okay.
However, aesthetically, it becomes an extreme, or
A
very
nuisance of
extreme
sorts.
problem for
Right,
us.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, and my second other question is just, in the memo that we received where, this is the memo from Joe to Water and Sewer Commission, and under the project description, the additional building utility upgrades are also proposed and include a new building fire sprinkler system.
Yes, that's correct.
Permanent standby power,
Mhm.
and an upgrade to the existing heating and ventilation system.
Mhm.
So would you say those items are integral to your project, or are they sort of ancillary? Are they additional, or are they part of
They
having
are-
to do what you need to do?
They are integral to the project, and that was kind of one of the things when the project was developing and being designed. We triggered, by way of fire code, the need for sprinklers,
Okay.
which weren't necessary when the building was this size or
Okay.
when these chemicals were going to be stored for treatment. It triggered things like
Okay.
that. And of course, because of age, the heating system has now
Okay.
reached its useful life and needs to be replaced. And while we're doing that, these are the things we want to incorporate into it at the same time.
All right. Thanks, thank you.
Yeah.
So where I was gonna go, no, I had questions. Where I was gonna go was partially there, as far as the wants and the needs, because it did seem like there's things that you need to do and things that you want to do, and the upgrades of the facility, whether it's the heating system and things like that, are there things that you can defer for out years, as opposed to doing everything now?
Well, actually, we sort of prepared our bid document. Will have some deducts in there to sort of address that. In case, for example, and this is based on the 4.6?
Yes.
Yeah, we have some deduct items that are going to be part of the bid package to basically take us from the whole project down to certain things that potentially could be removed, at least initially, in order to make the project,
More cost effective.
more cost effective.
Because that's kind of one
I
of the
mean,
things that
we-
we've been trying to do, is trying to get from the need to the want. And
Mhm.
it's like the things that we need to do, we need to do. The things that we want to do, sometimes we can't do.
Right.
So my other question is, and this is just me, I've never built a filtration system before. It just seems like $4.6 million to put a filter just on that one well by itself. You're saying it would cost a lot more than that. So to put
No.
put a filter on that one well,
Yeah, no, because first of all, you need to construct an entirely new building.
yeah?
You have to build a building,
Yeah.
and you would have to put at least 3 filters in that building, and you would have to supply it with generator power, and all of the HVAC, and all of the treatment components and pumps that make that whole unit work together.
So if I was gonna do that, I would be spending rough order magnitude,
I think it's closer to 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you gotta do all that, you have to do that for the upgrade, for the treatment at well 6 anyway, right? Put in a building, you have to bring power to it, you have to do all of those mods.
Well, all
anyway.
that's there.
Yeah.
All we're going to be adding on to the
Okay,
building.
so you don't have, to. Okay.
Yeah.
It's that building next to the
It's the building next to
middle
the youth
school.
football field,
Yeah.
the brick bulding there.
Mm.
So we're just adding to that building.
Got those
Everything's
weird
already
pumps
there, the
coming out of
generator's already there, all the,
Pipes coming out of the ground.
Mhm.
everything else is there.
So, well 2A doesn't have this filter yet. Is this
No.
gonna be something you're gonna come to us soon
Oh,
and say?
well, it was my intent to do both of these projects at the same time. A want, that's a want, and we prioritized based on the study, and said, well, we can only afford to do so much.
So as you're upgrading the filters now, are they gonna accept the volume coming out of 2A? Or you're gonna come
No,
back?
2A is on the other side of town.
Oh, that's,
It's a separate geographic area, Brydebrook Road area.
okay.
And the well doesn't output as much as well 1A. It can be managed a little differently
So it's-
in the short term.
So it would have to have a standalone filter if it had a filter.
Well, what our plan is there when we did the study was to take well 2A and run it, pipe it over to a filtration plant that's already in existence. Same sort of concept. But again, that's another costly project that we really can't look at this point in time.
But you would expect to look at it soon, or sometime.
Let's use the word sometime.
Okay, so this is an aesthetic concern, it's not a health concern. It includes some level activities that have to be done and some things that maybe would be nice to be done.
I would like to caveat that statement that you just made when we say aesthetic concerns. I will tell you that the EPA is looking at manganese, and as they do with all contaminants over time, they're continually evaluating the health risks associated with things we haven't even, even things we don't necessarily monitor for. One of them is manganese, that they are studying in more detail to see if they will be putting an MCL on it at some point in time. So in some regards, I am trying to stay ahead of the curve on that, because they are, there is what they call UCMR4 testing, which is testing that water companies are doing to get sort of a feel of whether there are contaminants out there or things that should be monitored in the future, of which manganese is one of them.
But as
So
far-
we gotta be,
But as far as the requirements that we have today,
that's right.
we meet the requirements that we have today. There is
Yeah,
no
that's
health
right,
issues
yes.
with doing this. This is just trying to get ahead of.
Mhm.
Okay.
I have one question. Concerning that 1,400 feet, what precautions are you taking so there's not a problem with breakage or going down the road with that, like we had the break over in
Yeah.
East
Well,
Lyme?
There should be no concern about, under new construction, this will be a controlled event. Contractor will be able to install this pipe with relative ease. The concern is really going to be coordination with the Board of Ed in the management of all the athletic activities that are going on, to find the proper window in time to make sure we don't conflict with, all those events that are occurring.
Yeah,
So
what's the
that will
material-
make it a difficult challenge.
What
for
kind of
us.
material is this pipe?
It'll be ductile iron pipe. It'll be ductile iron,
Yeah.
which is the most, durable,
Yeah.
long-lasting piping material that we can use. It'll be installed in pretty much well-graded, nice material. And it's all sand, that's the aquifer, that's all sand
Right.
and gravel in there. So we're not gonna be concerned too much about what the substrate is.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So interesting enough, so I'm the Director of Public Works, I oversee water and sewer as I sit in front of the highway. I ask him the same questions as far as, so I'm with you guys, everything you asked, I ask it because now we get in the hard part. He's demonstrated the need, I agree with the need, it just as, this guy is just coming off, he's the president of the Connecticut Water, he knows what he's talking about, we're extremely lucky to have him. But even when he says that, he could say, this is the greatest thing in the world. Can we afford it? Can the ratepayers, can this not be devastating to the ratepayers? Can we put this into our budget, into our water department budget, so that we're not all over the place with our rates and unreasonable to our ratepayers? So that's what I did. So we pushed this project off. We were originally going to vote on it, I think, in October. And I asked Brad, can we wait a month so I can do an analysis to really look at it? And I looked at 10 years. So there's a ton of numbers on here. I mean, I know you got a lot of other things tonight, so I'm just going to really 10,000 foot highlight of this. But what I did is I looked at this as 10 years of, these are all our line items, because you guys don't, I mean, you see them every year, I believe, at the annual meeting, but looked at all, so the yellow is, I don't know if you got colored it, the yellow on the expenditure on the first side of the 11 is the actual numbers the last 3 years. That's what we spent. The orange is what we're in right now, and everything else is the next 10 years. So I try to make all kinds of assumptions, a lot of stuff in there. There's labor, there's insurance, there's all kinds of interconnect. The top matrix there is the numbers of all these debt numbers. So one of the things that's working for us is in this year, our debt, our bond principal that needs to be paid off in the water department is $527,000. It's the second line in on the right orange column. That is a spike year, and we've been planning for that spike year for a few years. And when I say spike year, it went up 190,000. So, do you know where I'm talking about? In the
No.
orange.
No.
I'm trying to
Are you
find
on
it.
the orange or are you on
The
that upper
second
box?
orange
Oh, okay.
column, the
Thank
second
you.
line
Thank you.
down, it says 527.
Yes. Okay.
That is the debt service for the water department this year.
But it's 552 next year.
It's not 552 next
If I
year.
go out 2
You go
years from
out
now, I
2
got
years,
505 and then.
That's 2 years
552.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm only just saying this because it actually drops. If you go up to the top tab here, it drops to 298 next year. Because this is a spike year. It went up 190 and then it plummeted down. So we're not actually, the first payment of this project won't be in 1920. The first payment would be in 2021. So it's actually a huge part of why this thing, the way I see this project. So our rates are now set, and the way I did this analysis over 10 years is I tried to put in a reasonable increase in the budget every year. I mean, budgets, especially in the water department, and you know, some of the questions were asked, well, why does it cost so much? What I've learned in this is everything with water and sewer has extra zeros on it. It's not your typical projects. Anything to do with water and sewer is so much more expensive. It's just highly specialized work. So the assumption I made in here is that I have an increasing budget of 2.75% every year, and that's in a ballpark of an acceptable amount. And I also, on the other side, for revenues, I projected a 2% rate increase going forward. Now, obviously, no one wants a rate increase, but I think MPU about a year ago did a 26% rate increase. And the last thing the customers want is the rates to go all over the place. 1 year it goes up 15%, then it goes up 2%. Over the last 2 years, going to the back sheet. In 2015, the rates went up 1.5%. In 2016, they went up 5%. In 17, they went up 5%. And this year, they're 3.5%. So they're kind of bouncing around.
We're trying to follow you. We're not familiar. It's on the bottom there, but I get what you're saying. It's trying to keep up with you. It's not easy to do.
On the back.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff on here.
Right. So just
the rates.
The rate change, okay.
right. If you just give us a little indication where you are, it'll help
3 or
us
4
out a
lines
lot.
below the 11,
Yeah.
yellow.
So if we could just take a breath,
Yeah.
that 2% that you're forecasting every year for the next 10 years
Okay.
is 2% every year on top of the prior year.
Correct.
Okay.
On the rates. So our rates are also on the bottom of what ratepayers pay. So they're on the bottom right now. So that 2% projects out for 10 years of what that rate would be. Now, the town of East Lyme is obviously one, you know, if you're a customer of East Lyme, probably one of your questions, I'm a customer of East Lyme, water and sewer, is like, well, how is that rate? Is it high? Is it low? So I did an analysis of 2 local other water utilities in the area, Norwich Public Utilities and Groton Public Utilities. Very similar because they're kind of municipal related. And one of the problems with our department is that we bill every 6 months and everyone else bills every month. So if you actually paid your electric bill every 6 months, you would hate to pay that. Well, that's what happens with us. So people think that they're paying a lot, and they are. But if you multiply it over 6 months, it could be $300. That's a lot for someone to pay out. All the other utility companies are paying out or billing out every month. So if you use 40,000 gallons in the town of East Lyme, this is not on here. I'm just telling you. If you use 40,000 gallons, your bill would be for water would be $236. In Groton, it would be $331. In Norwich, it'd be $323. So
That's for the year?
East Lyme
or for-
236.
For that number down.
Well, I took their monthly and projected it out over 6
Okay.
months.
But that 236 that you just quoted is a 6-month bill?
For 40,000 gallons of use over 6 months in East Lyme. So from our rate, but the point being is our rates are actually very good.
Yeah.
And so I'm projecting out
Maybe
a
too
2% rate increase every year, which I think is reasonable. I mean, it would be nice to say nothing.
Right.
And I'm plopping in this project into this. And I have to say, because you would ask the question about the 2A, is that, Bill had asked the question. I'm not in supporting of coming back with 2A anytime. Hopefully you don't see me coming back, because I don't think that is the next priority. The next priority is our meter replacement project, which is already in here as well. So we are actually going to be back to you guys in about 2 months to do a meter replacement project that is also factored into here in the same analysis. So if you see, you're going to see us again in 2 months. Here we go. It's already actually in this analysis that a 2.7. And so the way I do it, the way I'm projecting it, is since we only have to pay, since the debt service next year is $298,000, And right now, we're paying 520, I'm going on the other side, I'm sorry. Going on the other side. I'm doing a debt, I'm proposing a debt reserve. So I'm trying to balance that debt reserve to keep a 2.75% approximate increase in the water budget. And by doing that, in the first year that it comes on, I can save, the first year, I can put away $183,000. I mean, some towns do it. When I worked in Stonington, they used to have a debt reserve. The town could do a debt reserve as you set aside money for it. It's like a rainy day account. So, because if your debt service is already at 525 this year, and I drop it down to 298, I could conceivably decrease rates. But why would we do that when our rate is so much lower than everyone else's, and we have this huge need? And in this package is the water meter replacement, which what we're trying to get to with the meter replacement project is so that ultimately you can look up. If you're a water customer, you can look up online and see what your water use is, and it would tell you if you had a water break. I know that's another project, but it's coming down in about 2 months that we're going to come back to. So I'm comfortable after doing all these numbers, and I'm certainly open to any questions. There is a lot of numbers in here that I believe we can take on this job and still have a reasonable growth in the operating expenditures and a reasonable rate increase going forward.
So let me ask you something. So there's a lot of great information on here. I mean, your assumptions are great. You did a lot of good work on here. The Water and Sewer Commission already approved this, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to be clear, your objective here is to try to give us an understanding of where you came up, well, it's not even the estimate for the project, because we went out to.
The estimate's not me, yep.
I'm gonna sound silly and naive, but what's our objective by understanding all these numbers?
It's the fact that this is a responsible thing for the town to go forward.
But do we need to give our approval of that? Doesn't that come from the Water and Sewer Commission?
This commission has,
Help me out.
because
You have to approve, so, you have to approve, the authorization, so that it goes to the next step, which is the town meeting. However,
But this isn't the this
Right.
isn't the 4.6 million.
it is.
right.
No, you already got a bid from Ty and,
No, Ty and Bond is not the contractor. Ty
no,
So
but
the
they gave
reason-
you an estimate for the project for
Correct.
4.6, right?
So the reason that Joe is going through this exercise is he wanted you to have, a level of comfort that, the numbers have been looked at, and he feels comfortable that it's affordable for the ratepayers. And so he wanted to show you, that he went through that to make that determination, to assist you in,
Okay,
your
so what-
analysis of the project.
So you're taking the 4.6 million project and you're incorporating it into the rate base and showing us what it would be for the ratepayers,
Correct.
right? Okay. My second question is, on the cover letter, you say, at the last Water and Sewer Commission on blah, I was tasked with looking at the blah for option 2 of well 1A and well 6. What's option 1?
Option 1 actually had microgrid incorporated. We've been working with the school on trying to set up a microgrid in that area. I've been working very much with Mariana Stevens and Jeff Newton and trying to hook that all area up to try to save the town money. The problem is that's all driven on a state grant, and the grant cycle hasn't come out yet, and I can't wait on this project. So
Okay.
we did the best we could to play nice and to try to have it, but we have to move forward with this project. So option 2 is to take, the designer put an extra $460,000 to put a microgrid in, and the whole purpose I told her with the microgrid is to save money, not spend money.
Yeah, all right.
So that's option 2.
1's off the table.
Correct.
So when you went back to billing, you talked about other towns. Have we considered billing monthly?
We're not in a position because all the other towns have a meter system that actually, the meter replacement
I
is
smell
gonna,
it, you
what
cooking.
we're gonna do is we're gonna hit a button and read the town. Now it takes 2 to 3 guys, 10 weeks, every 6 months to walk the streets to read every meter in town. It's so archaic,
God,
so.
that hurt to hear.
So my
Because I
goal,
didn't
my
ask
goal
that.
is to get quarterly billing, and it's really driven by cash flow. Because we run out of cash or get close every 5-6 months, and then we go up, we go down, we go up.
So this project includes the metering?
Nope.
Didn't I just hear you say that?
No, he's
I said that I'll
coming
be
back
back in about 2
Financial
months to
analysis.
ask for the meter, but it's already factored into the analysis.
But the Excel file has the meters in it.
It's in there.
Yeah.
Right. So, what is the price tag on that? Just ballpark?
2.3, but that's not gonna be the same, we're not gonna go, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not going for bonding with that. We're doing a drinking water fund, 2% loan. It still has the backing
Right,
of the
you-
town, but we don't go
right,
out for
right.
bonds. And actually 2% is great, so that's why
Right.
we're looking to jump on that.
So, I mean, certainly I don't have the kind of background to understand this or the desire either, and I trust what you guys are doing in terms of a very good analysis. And from my standpoint, this is really up to the taxpayers, and that's why I imagine it goes to, the town meeting afterward. It's really up to them. Because we're not going to be responsible for the repayment of this loan. We are just saying that, yes, we will act as, I don't even know what you call it, the fiduciary for the bond. We're the ones that
You're
have
the
to take up,
parent,
because.
you're the cosigner,
The cosigner, right, that's a
You're the
good way to
parent.
look at it, because they don't have the
authority.
Ability to do it.
authority.
It's based on the full faith and credit of the town.
Right, right. So so my question is more on that side, the whole bonding issue, and my questions revolve around what is going to happen to our credit rating now if we are on the hook for an additional 4 million, maybe 2 more million 2 months from now?
So the way.
And now we're going to
Right.
do,
4.6 million.
possibly the police station fire,
So
safety
good-
complex, like what is going to happen?
Okay, so
to-
good question. When the rating agencies look at us as a credit, they do not, they exclude the water debt
Okay.
as it's, paid for by the ratepayers.
That sounds so simple.
Pardon?
That sounds so simple.
And water and sewer are considered utilities, and water is considered a necessity in the, in the big
Mhm.
picture scheme of things.
Okay. That answers my question as well. I have a similar question.
So,
Any other questions?
and it doesn't matter because it's, just for informational purposes. So the rate increase is basically gonna be 2.75% per year annually
No,
with this 4.6.
no.
So what would the percentage increase be annually?
The operating budget increase projecting is 2.75.
Okay,
I'm projecting a 2% rate increase.
okay. For indefinitely or?
Well, that's what I'm projecting to make this work. Because Jason, if I went in here and said it was
Okay,
gonna
I
take
see.
a 15% rate increase, I
Right.
wouldn't be in front of you guys, because
Right.
I wouldn't wanna be doing that. But a 2% is
Right,
pretty reasonable, especially comparable to other utilities in the area.
right. So then, next month, I'm assuming, just using rough numbers, 4.6 million, 2%, 2 million for the meter upgrades. There'll be another, so it's gonna be 3% after you come back to us in the
No.
next few months.
It's already
The 2% is already
included
included.
This is included, okay, I thought it was, but
Everything
then
is-
somebody asked a question.
Everything is
Right,
included.
Okay.
it was confusing.
Fine, all right.
I'm
Got
actually,
it.
the meter replacement project, I'm putting on a separate water line, so
Okay.
it's not under debt, because it's not being held like as
It's a-
debt,
it's
it's
a-
being held as the drinking water fund.
Okay,
And the sewer department is helping pay for that, because they get all the benefits of the meters. They just get okay, this is how much you can bill people. They don't have to read the meters, they don't have to maintain the meters. So sewer department pays for a portion of this, so the sewer customers do too.
But the
Thank you.
expectation
Yeah.
is if I was a water user, which I'm not, then I would expect to see a 2% increase in my bill. If I use the same amount of water every year, I'd expect to see a 2% increase year over year for the next.
That's what I'm projecting.
And that includes this filtration unit, and this includes the meters both.
Correct.
Awesome.
What percent of the town of taxpayers are ratepayers?
Well, we have, how many, it's 6,500 customers?
Yes.
6,500 customers, so 2/3 of the town? I mean, customer, most people, 2 people in a house, 13,000, and, yeah, give or take.
But it looks like based on your analysis, you have different rates based on the usage, so so it's a higher rate for more usage, so I'm assuming that the commercial base picks up a little bit more than the
Correct.
residential.
And that's to,
right?
that's to,
That's
that's to
typical,
push conservation. The less you
Yeah.
use, the less you pay.
Right, right.
The 40,000 gallons you mentioned, I'm just curious, is that
Yeah.
like the average household?
Correct. Yeah. It's pretty much between 30 and 40,000. So the lowest tier is 40,000 and less. And there's a lot of people between 30 and 42, so it behooves you to get under that to,
You always do an awesome job. I mean, by the time we're done, we understand what you started out trying to explain to us an hour ago. It
it's a
takes
lot of
us a while to
stuff.
get it, but by the time
We gotta-
by the time you're
Way to go
done.
from wells to money.
Any other questions? No other questions? Thank you. So I think at this point, there's a motion that's attached to the second page, or the,
Second page. Right?
So do you do this resolution?
do I hear a motion to,
Yes, we do. Resolved that the resolution entitled Resolution Appropriating 4.64 million for the construction of modifications and upgrades to the East Lyme Well 1 Alpha and Well 6 water treatment plant project and authorizing the issuance of 4.64 million in bonds of the town to meet said appropriation and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purpose, a copy of which is attached hereto, is hereby adopted and recommended for approval by the legal voters of the town at town meeting.
I have a motion, do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further questions, comments, or discussions about the motion before us? Hear none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so moved, 600. Thank you, sirs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Next agenda item is the schedule for 2019.
I'll move to
Anna,
approve.
can I ask why in our packet we have that letter that's describing how boards and agendas and schedules, does that feed into why we have, or is that just housekeeping? Is there anything that we're supposed to think about in that?
It's
Or-
just more of like a housekeeping
Okay.
item, so that's why,
Okay,
since you were doing your, calendar, I had, put it in the same.
I didn't know if there was a
package.
compliance question in here someplace.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
sorry.
Sorry, were you gonna?
I move to approve the Board of Finance meeting schedule